Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. I've decided, Mondays night's a good night for streaming, so I'm happy to be here to stream. Don't worry, I'm still going to be doing my daily videos tomorrow, but it's always nice to stream. So at least once a week, I want to stream. Except for Tuesday nights, I always stream Tuesday night for my Substack followers. So if you're not part of my Substack, check it out. It's a way to support me, and I really do appreciate it. I'm still getting used to like how I look without glasses because I don't need glasses for the most part for distance, but sometimes those aren't it. I have two different like reading glasses. Hang on here. Ugh. Let me get my new reading glasses here. Yeah, this is better. So I can see far away, but up close, I still need reading glasses, and a computer's fairly close. And it's weird because when I read a book, I have to even use a higher power reading glass. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go back to the eye doctor and get a proper prescription. But otherwise, I'm feeling good. So, guys, it's great to be here, and thank you very much. And if you want to interact with the show, I have SuperChats on YouTube. Rumble has Rants. Let me make sure my Rumble stream is going good. And then there's also Streamelements has a tip feature. All right. Hi, Rumble. I'm on there. So whatever works for you, I do appreciate. I appreciate all the tips. And thank you. And I saw before the show, Rich Mountains, any takers on a fantasy bet for today's topic? Oh, can I be part of this fantasy bet? I bet I'd win. Charlie Kirk, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. That was on the list. The Ukrainian girl butchered. I didn't have that so much on. Children murdered at the church. Yeah, well, that's kind of sad, but that's kind of old. No, what I'm probably going to talk about, mostly Charlie Kirk, but we'll see how it goes. But I do have other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about some diversity at the theater. We'll talk about that. Some so-called movement news. Someone named Chris Cantwell. That was kind of a funny story. Russian drone attacks. So I got a few things to cover today. But obviously, still the big story is Charlie Kirk, because I don't think it's done. I really don't think the whole story is done. There's a lot more to go in the criminal investigation. But I think it's fundamentally changed our culture. I really do. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think it's equivalent to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm not comparing the two men. Charlie Kirk was actually a good family man. I don't think he cavorted with underage prostitutes like the good Reverend, but in the psyche, it had this a similar effect. When someone is known just for speaking, and I know MLK Jr. wasn't speaking at the time, but he was assassinated for his beliefs and for what he said, very similar to Charlie Kirk. And I think it's fundamentally changed a lot in this country, how we're looking at things. It's going to change a lot too under the Trump administration, how they deal with left-wing extremists. For the longest time, we were always told by the ADL, SPLC, the media, the Biden administration, that the right-wing extremists, there aren't any left-wing extremists. It's just right-wing extremists. Remember, they had that commission on white nationalism, and they had, I think, Candace Owens representing the white nationalists. That was a strange thing. They had that one guy with Tourette's. Our whole government's a comedy show. I remember that. And so they demanded that the FBI arrest more white nationalist terror cells. Of course, there weren't any, was the problem. But that started the big push where they were hiring informants and everything else, trying to infiltrate anyone they thought was a white nationalist. I had a couple come to me. At least I'm pretty sure one was. I'm not a group or anything, but they were desperate. They were sending them all out there trying to get people to fall for their silly plots or to do something illegal. But I think our side got kind of wise with that. And so we understand that. So there's that. And then there's just the deplatforming. That used to just be on the right. On the right, you could say the most mild thing, especially when came to COVID. You get censored on YouTube, deplatformed, kicked off Twitter. At the time, it was Twitter. Even in some cases, they debank people, kicked you out of the banking system. Whereas on the left, you could say whatever you wanted. You could call for the death of all white people. That's perfectly fine. No one's going to stop you. There's no penalty. So the left really had it in their head. They could say whatever they wanted and there'd be no consequence. But when we objected to that, saying, hey, we should have free speech, and even if you don't like our speech, we shouldn't be kicked off the banking system, they would say, well, freedom of speech isn't freedom of consequences. You remember that? That was a big one. Well, it's funny now because now it's being turned on the left. All these leftists that are celebrating the murder of a family man, a pretty mild guy too, speaking his mind, doing TikTok videos, dancing, I just horrendous stuff. A lot of those people have been fired, and they should be. This is horrible. A lot of these people disproportionately are people like teachers and nurses. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you people? I wouldn't want someone in the medical profession that advocates murder, or teaching your children that says advocating murder is a good thing. That's horrendous. We used to debate stuff like healthcare, taxes, foreign policy, but I never thought that we'd be out of the place in America where we would actually debate, is it okay to murder someone because you don't like what they're saying? And there's a big segment in our population that actually believes that. They believe that words are violence. And if you don't like what someone says, it's fine for you to kill them because they're probably Hitler. You kill Hitler back in the day? So you got to kill Hitlers, and Trump is Hitler. And Charlie Kirk supported Hitler. So therefore, Charlie Kirk is a danger. So you have a right to kill him. A lot of people, they have that rhetoric, but they don't actually do it. But the thing that's always a problem, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. I was talking to Sasha about this the other day. It's sort of why I don't really meet as many people in real life anymore. And, Sasha brought it up, 99.9% of the people you meet are real cool, good experiences. And I really don't regret it because I met a lot of great people who still really great friends. But there's always a chance you're going to get some weirdo, right? What's to prevent someone that just pretends to be a fan, but they really want to kill you because they think you are Hitler. And the problem is you have some people that are really off in the head that will take this literally. And I think this is the way probably Tyler Robinson was. He went down that rabbit hole of Reddit, got into the left-wing politics, got into probably transgender porn. Then he got into all sorts of weirder stuff with furries and all of that. And then eventually he just internalized the whole, you got to kill Hitler thing. So that's what he thought he would do. And he thought it would be celebrated. And he was right. A lot of people did celebrate it. But now he probably regrets it. Although he confessed to his family, now he's saying he didn't do it, which is, of course, I'm sure his lawyers on the arraignment, your lawyers always plead not guilty, even if you are guilty, because they want to try to get a deal. So we will see. It should be interesting if there's a trial. But it seems like this guy, Tyler, went into homosexuality with this one guy, his friend, who was supposedly transitioning to a woman. And his friend was into the furry scene, which I guess is more degeneracy, where you try to get sexually aroused by thinking you're having sex with animals. And see, this is what happens when you go more and more degeneracy. It starts to break your mind. It's not healthy. And we have a spiritual component to this, and I'm going to discuss that anyway. I usually don't get into religion, but there is a spiritual component where when you do more and more evil things, you get more and more, it's easier to be controlled by demons. And I don't think most possessions are like The Exorcist, where you float in the air or anything like that. And I don't believe that demons just can take people willy-nilly. I think there's kind of some spiritual rules. God has said, no, you can't do that unless they actively try to bring you in. So it's like a vampire. I think that's where they get the vampire thing. Like, vampire can't come into your house unless you invite them. I think with demons it's very similar. Even if you're not a Christian, you can't really bring them. They can't hurt you or influence you that much unless you actively bring them in. And the more you bring them in, the more they can influence you. and then you just get some really weird stuff that happens. And I don't really consider it so much a mental illness. It's just the brain gets more and more controlled with this behavior. And these behaviors are kind of adjacent. And what I mean by that, there are certain things that are natural, but they're still wrong. For example, let's say you're a guy and you're married, you have a cute secretary, and you have an affair with her. Well, that's still sinful. That's still wrong. And I'm not advocating that or anything, but it's not like super unnatural because it's a man and woman coming together. And again, that's still sinful and cause problems, but it's not a total perversion. But then you get into stuff that's more a perversion, like homosexuality is a perversion. And then you get even a more extreme perversion, which is transgenderism, which is because God made sex for a man and woman to come together and make a family. Homosexuals can't do that. But then you have even a more mockery of God if you have a man that's pretending to be a woman. So he's like defying what God has made him. And it's even more perversion. And now we're getting even more, I guess, where these people are getting into the whole furry thing, which years ago I just thought were people that were kind of goofy that like to pretend to be animals, just as fun, dress up. But I guess and maybe some are still that way, but I think there's a whole subcult that really enjoys the sexual aspect of it, which is really strange to me, but that's even more degenerate. So now, you've gone from the old days, have sex with your secretary, which is wrong, but it's still somewhat natural, until then you get into the homosexuality, which is again unnatural, which wasn't accepted prior, but now it's not only accepted but promoted. We have a whole Pride Month and Pride parades and all celebrations for that behavior. And then that's not enough. Then it comes trans, which is even more unnatural. It's where you take a man, he pretends to be a woman, he has sex with another man. And then it gets even more now where you have to pretend you're an animal to get off on that. And what's the next step? I don't know. I guess pedophilia, and I'm not talking with teenagers, but like little children or babies. That's another extreme perversion. I would assume eventually maybe they want to dig up corpses in the graveyard, have sex with them, and they'll claim that's their identity and that you're hateful if you don't support that they have a right to have sex with corpses, and you need to celebrate it. You need to be an ally. And my theory is the further you go down these perversions, the more it breaks your mind in a demonic sense, where you're more likely to be controlled in doing other very horrible things. So the guy that has an affair with a secretary, not condoning it, but he's unlikely to say, hey, this guy over here, this preacher's saying, it's wrong to cheat on your wife. And we should even have penalties for that. If you're caught cheating on your wife, adultery, you should have to pay a penalty. It's not like that guy would probably feel a little bit shamed, the guy that's cheating on his wife, but he wouldn't think, I need to kill that guy. I need to kill that guy because he's not affirming me sleeping with my secretary. So I got to kill the guy that's saying that. It would never occur to him to do that, right? But the further you go down into perversion, say homosexuality, then trans and furry and whatever else they're coming up with, then you get more of the idea that if anyone objects to what you're doing or doesn't affirm it, as they would say, then that it enrages these people to the point where they think they're justified in killing. So the more you go down into degeneracy, the more likely you are to engage in violent behaviors, very antisocial behavior. And if you look at like the so-called transgender community, it has a very high suicide rate, a very high drug addiction, horrible problems. And then per capita, when we see all the shootings that have happened, I mean, just earlier this year, we had the transgender shoot up a Christian school, killed children praying. See, that's not natural. That's something that's just really broken in your brain. And I would say is demonic, not figuratively, but literally. But it's not like these demons just came into the person without being invited. The person got more and more into weird stuff and invited this into their life, and it breaks their other ways of doing things, their other ways. So it's not like you can, by the way, this is what we used to call character, that you live a decent life. But if you don't live a decent life and you have a secret life where you live a very degenerate manner, it's going to affect the other ways that you live. So it's not like you could be a really good person and do wonderful things, but let's say you want to have sex with corpses. It's just not going to happen. You're going to end up in other areas of your lives doing horrible things. It's just it's inevitable that's going to happen. And that's the way these things sort of work. And that's why there's always restrictions on some behavior. And again, I'm not throwing stones and saying I'm perfect or anyone else is perfect. I've done bad things. We all have, right? So that's not what I'm trying to get at. It's just that you got to be very careful how far you go down these roads. And a lot of these people, like this Tyler, he probably grew up normal. And if it wasn't, let's say for Reddit and all this crazy enough, if he would have been raised, let's say when I was and I graduated high school in 1981. Let's say if he graduated high school back then with me, no one knew transgender back then. That wasn't a thing. Homosexuality wasn't out of the closet. It was still pretty rare for anyone to talk about it. So he probably would have been a strange kid, a little bit nerdy, but he would have ended up with a girlfriend or whatever and lived that sort of life. And then, maybe got later, maybe if he did get married and later on he'd get unhappy with his wife and maybe he would be tempted to have an affair, right? That's where it would be. But it wouldn't be going down this weird rabbit trail they go down now, where they get on Reddit, they see transgender porn, they think that excites them, and they don't have any, they say, well, what does it hurt just to look? And then they start to want to do more than just look, and then it just escalates. And then you get people like Tyler. That's what happens. And that's why it's a huge mistake to celebrate this type of behavior. That's why the whole LGBTQ thing is wrong to celebrate that behavior. You could talk about what sort of penalties they should be, but throughout societies, they have certain rules of behavior that humans need to live by. And it's sort of on a continuum. Like, again, the guy cheating on his wife with his secretary. Yeah, that's bad, but that's not as destructive to society if he was in the middle of the night digging up corpses and having sex with them. Because if he's doing that, he's probably going to do horrible things else. He'll probably end up a serial killer or do something else strange. And that's why we see people like, who is Jeffrey Dahmer? He got into weird stuff with it. He was gay and he got into S&M, and it just accelerated into what happened with him. And again, they don't always end up to being killers, but there's disproportionately high amount of killers and a lot of other destructive influences. So this type of thing should not be celebrated. It should be seen as sinful and something that we should try to avoid, and definitely not teaching our children this is a wonderful thing to do. Because I don't think people are born wanting to have sex with animals. I mean, this is all ridiculous. This is all conditioned. And so this is at the heart of really what we're struggling with here in the society, because we have one society that says our highest value is sodomy. We got to promote it everywhere we are. Then you have another part of society saying, no, that's very destructive. I mean, you could talk about, what you do in the privacy of your own home, and is it a mental illness? And we got to have some grace to people, because we all have struggles. I get it, right? But at the same time, we shouldn't be advocating or promoting or affirming or being an ally of extremely destructive behavior like that. And it is destructive behavior. So we're kind of in a civilization war right now with that. And I think that's sort of at the heart of what is happening with what happened here. So I'm going to go through a few things here about the case. And again, I'm just not going to cover probably this case, Charlie Kirk murder. Well, I do think it was a huge pivoting point in America. And I'll probably come back to this a lot, because there's a lot of things that are coming up now too. First of all, how wide it is this? I don't think Tyler Robinson was alone. After these crimes were committed, you had a lot of other transgender people or furries or whatever they are. And again, I haven't personally gone down deep in that culture, if you want to call that. So I don't know all their acronyms or the furry things, and I guess he wrote some on his bullets. I don't understand that all, and I don't really want to understand all that perversion they get into. But it sounds like a lot of those types were not only celebrating that they happened, but they knew ahead of time that it's going to happen, because there's a few accounts on X and Instagram that they were saying, "Oh, watch out when Charlie Kirk comes, something big's going to happen. You'll know it when you see it." And then when it happened, he was murdered. One of the transgenders posted, "We fucking did it." So that is sort of a mission of some guilt there, because if you had prior knowledge of this, and especially if you helped, like reportedly Tyler Robinson, his rifle, there was a report it wasn't his, someone gave it to him. So if someone gave it to him to kill Charlie Kirk, that person could be facing the death penalty now too. So it looks like that the investigation is not over, but they want to try to roll up. Was this a conspiracy? How many people were involved? What was their planning? Did they like buy the weapon? Did they know the murder was going to happen and help facilitate it? So there's a lot of stuff that is going on there. That's a one of the things. So let's take a look at this here just to go over. Here we go. And by the way, here we go.
And anything new on the investigation? You say he admitted that, confessed?
No, not again. He is not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. There were reports yesterday that we can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. That's information that the FBI had mentioned yesterday. We can confirm that as well, and that he is cooperating with authorities as well.
And his boyfriend, or whatever you want to call that, the guy that's transitioning, I guess he's squealing, because obviously the question is, was he involved with the conspiracy? If so, he could face the death penalty. So he's ratting out his lover, which I figured he would. And so initially after the shooting, it was interesting. A lot of liberals. It was sad how many cheered, and you see them on TikTok, the music celebration, a girl with a nose ring dancing to celebration because they're happy someone was murdered for just speaking their beliefs. Horrible stuff. And so at first they were all celebrating it, like, this is good. Finally, someone had the guts to kill this Hitler, Charlie Kirk. And then it was like, is this bad optics? And then they were trying to do the meme. Well, Tyler Robinson, he wasn't one of us. He wasn't on the left. He was a MAGA guy, or if he wasn't a MAGA guy, he was a griper. He was a griper. And which I thought was done in bad faith, because there was no evidence of that other than he was kind of weird. Not to make fun of gripers, but it's funny when it came out to confirm that he had a transgender boyfriend. Someone quipped, "Oh no, now his evidence is a griper." And it's funny because there is a little bit of overlap there of the incel community, and I guess some of these dollhouse, they call it, and I don't know, it was in the whole Catboy, and just a lot of strange stuff that happened on the Groiper side, and women are icky. And so there's been a little bit of mixing there. Like, well, wait a minute, which side did this guy really belong on? Was he, because one of the theories was that Tyler Robinson was secretly a fan of Nick Fuentes, and he wanted to murder Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk wasn't based enough. And Nick used to. I know Nick pulled away from it. Nick says a lot of stuff that's just trolling, but they had their, you had to take your pledge. You will be willing to fight and rape and die for Nicholas Fuentes, or whatever. Kill, rape, and die. I think that was the phrase. I forget what it was. And it was meant just trolling. But the problem is, if you're pretty influential and you say something like that, like, hey, if you're going to follow me, you got to be willing to kill, rape, and die for me. Most people know that's tongue in cheek, but the problem is, again, 99.9% of people understand that, but then you have that 0.1% that could take that seriously and say, hey, I want to be a good griper, so I'm going to kill for Nick. And I know Nick doesn't like Charlie because Charlie's like a cock, so I'm going to kill Charlie for Nick. But that didn't happen. There's no evidence that happened because this guy, on the bullets, he would have wrote like cuck or something like that. But he wrote, catch this fascist. So he was using all the Antifa slogans. And when they did investigations into the guy, his family said he was left wing. His friends were left wing. He was into the Antifa stuff. And the people he hung around were into that sort of thing. So the left, initially, they were trying to claim he was a groyper with no evidence. And now we have the evidence that no, he wasn't. He would have just as happily, I'm sure Tyler would have happily killed Nick Fuentes. He would have happily killed anyone, Megan Ryan, Tucker Carlson, he would have killed. Even Ben Shapiro, he would have killed. I really believe that. Because these guys on the left, they would consider Ben Shapiro a white supremacist. And I know on our side, we're like, no, how could he be a white supremacist? He's not one of us. He's Jewish. He's Israel first. But that's not how they think on the left, right? They don't make these distinctions. Anyone that they're kind of crazy. Even liberals, I think, deserve to die. They're just insane. Again, because they've gone down this crazy rabbit hole that's really broken their brains. And what they do is unnatural, and they have a lot of self-hatred, and they hate to kill anyone that doesn't affirm it, they want to kill. So it was definitely. So we got the confirmation that Tyler Robertson wasn't some straight MAGA guy. He was a left-winger that had a transgender, I guess they call that, boyfriend who was transitioning. And let me just show you some other evidence for this here. There was more reporting because we need to go over this because there was a lot of lies the left were trying to claim he was on the right. But the relative spills on Lance Twigg. Lance Twigg was this guy, he's trying to pretend to be a Lance. And I guess he's trying to change his name to Luna. And these were in a homosexual relationship, but he wanted to try to pretend to be a girl and also an animal or whatever. I don't know. This stuff is weird, so I don't quite understand it all. But Lance, the relatives were saying that this guy was a nut too, and they were full of evil and hatred, and they feared he might hurt someone. And both these guys, they raged against Christians and conservatives. So that was from the relatives. So these guys weren't groypers. They weren't MAGA. They were on the hardcore left. They hated Christians. They hated conservatives. And that is what is that is what it was. Now, as to the evidence that this was a conspiracy, let's just take a look at this here. Meaning it was more than just a lone wolf. I don't think this was a lone wolf. This guy was saying 100% confident that Charlie's assassination was carried out by a radical left-wing transgender terror cell. I agree that too. Now, this so you understand how these left-wing groups operate, especially Antifa, because you'll hear a lot of people on the left, including Joe Biden. Remember Trump in one of the debates with Biden, I think the first time was criticizing Antifa, and Biden just repeated what he's been told that, well, Antifa is an idea, it's not an organization, which isn't true because you would see these people show up at events dressed in all black, matching uniforms. They used the same slogans. They had the same umbrellas to hide the crimes. They would tell them to bring skateboards so they could assault people, use it as a weapon. So they had this all planned out. But it's sort of true in the sense it's not like you just sign up for your local Antifa group and you get a membership card. I think they're fairly smart enough not to make it that obvious. So they have these cells that are loosely connected. And that's sort of the way it's done to try to protect themselves from, obviously, the FBI. Although previously they didn't really have to worry much about the FBI because the FBI was kind of on their side. So they could do, they could burn down Wendy's, they could attack conservatives, and there'd be no penalty. Excuse me. And they had a lot of lawyers and Soros money to protect them. So if they did do a crime, they would get a slap on the wrist and let out. But it's a real thing, but it is sort of it. So let's get into evidence. He was living with a transgender male to female. Yeah, that is confirmed. Two of the bullets found in Tyler's rifles had the engravings consistent with radical far left transgender ideology. This is one of the things that's amazing and how crazy it's all become. Antifa as a group, you would think like you think the original Antifa was in Germany when Mustache Man, the National Socialists, fought against the anti-fascists, and the National Socialists won. But at the time they were fighting them, and they were the Antifa were like kind of normal people, whereas now Antifa is heavily transgendered, way disproportionately. I don't know if the majority are, but it is high number. And a lot of the other people are like meth heads, drug addicts. That's at least the street level. The people that fund them are a little higher up, the networks like Soros and the left-wing networks. But at the low level, these people are really trash. And that's how they use it. Noticing bulge, OWO. Again, I don't recognize this meme. I'm not into this underground meme of transgenderism. I don't I don't understand all this ideology that some of these guys are in, but it refers to chasers or gay men who like trans women and is noticing the trans man's bulge. So I guess someone like Tyler likes the guy that the guy he's having sex with is like pretending to be a girl, but also has a penis. It's just a form of degeneracy that he gets off it on. And catch a fascist is self-explanatory. Again, a groyper would never write that. That's an anti-fa phrase. Tyler's transgender boyfriend's friends with a transgender account on TikTok and X that goes by the name Churro Bum 75. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Minutes after Charlie was confirmed dead, the transgender posted, "We fucking did it." Right here, this guy did this. And this is going to be very problematic for this guy. I'm sure he's going to get a visit from his local FBI agents and ask him, how do you know about this? So he could have some issues there. But this wasn't the only transgender account that had prior knowledge of the assassination. At least 2 other transgender accounts had posted in advance that something would happen to Charlie during his speaking event. Charlie Kirk is coming to my college tomorrow. I really hope someone evaporates him literally. So he is on X calling for murder. I don't know how he gets away with that. And then he says, let's just say something big will happen tomorrow. And a smiley face dog, like, haha, I know there's a plot to kill Charlie. Haha. So again, this implicates him legally. And he could be Omar here. It could be rolled up. I'm sure he's on the FBI radar and he may be trying to make a deal, but he could be facing the death penalty too. We know that Tyler was very active on transgender discords, a hotbed of radicalization for far left extremism. Was a Discord server used to plan the attack? There was multiple things that were said about that. And by the way, Discord is just, you can have private servers. And I would push, there are a lot of transgender, I guess, stuff and weird stuff on Discords, but the majority of Discords aren't this type of thing. A lot of them mostly are like for gaming. For example, if you play World of Warcraft or some other game and you're part of a guild, a lot of times they will have their own Discord where they post information. You can have voice chat, that type of thing. So it's not planning assassinations. But there is some other transgender stuff that's used for that. We know that Tyler was given the rifle and did not purchase it himself. So who gave it to him and for what purpose? That could implicate that person. So this is it. Here's another account. You guys that have something big coming soon, just be sure to check your news. You know it when you see it. So again, this implies this guy knew something was happening. And it was proven, I remember when the the Utah governor initially spoke, he talked about the Discord server, which I didn't quite understand what he was talking about exactly. Because again, a Discord server is used to communicate with other people. I don't see the point of having a Discord server just for you and no one else. So there was some stuff happening probably on that Discord server. And again, I'm not blaming Discord because it'd be like blaming Gmail if people are seeing emails back and forth and Gmail planning an assassination. I would not, not a huge fan of Google and their policies, but I would not blame Google for that. And so I'm not blaming Discord for this type of thing at all. It's probably against their terms of service to plan assassinations. I don't know, but I imagine it would be. So I think there is a pretty good argument that this was pre-planned here. And then we had another thing. I won't show it because there's some violence, but a deranged leftist desecrates Charlie Kirk's memorial in Arizona. People got enough and tackled him though, and he was arrested. So again, there's a lot of people that are just really crazed here, that they think it's fine that if someone says something you don't like, you can kill them. And what's happening, which is great now, is the right is fighting back against a lot of these people. And here's the teacher, right? He spewed hate. You can't be upset that he did. So this fat lady, most all teachers seem to look like that. They're overweight shit libs. I'm sure she thought COVID was the most dangerous thing ever and wore a 3 mask and went up to you to pull your mask up. I can already tell it with her haircut and everything. I know her entire personality. They're a cancer on civilization if they're not kept under control. But that's what she did, right? She's never probably had a unique thought in her brain. She's an NPC. Unfortunately, a lot of teachers are like this. And this teacher said he spewed hate. Well, you're allowed to spew so-called hate. Hate is an emotion. And Charlie Kirk, I don't think he was pretty mild, but even if he did spew hate, that is not a reason to murder him. But this teacher says, basically, she's saying, hey, if you don't like what someone says, that's justification to murder them. Of course, this fat bitch probably wouldn't think that applies to her, right? So she probably wouldn't like the idea. Well, I don't like what you say, fat bitch. Does that give me the right to, put a bullet in your neck? I doubt she would sign off on that. No. She gets to decide what you can say and what you can't say. So obviously, someone like that shows they shouldn't be around children. They should definitely be on the list. They probably shouldn't own firearms. They're a very danger to humanity. And she was just one. There's been so many of these people that have popped up. And the good news is the right is fighting back, and a lot of these people are getting fired. And again, they were shocked because they thought they could always get away with saying all sorts of shit because they're on the left. There was no consequences for them. And now they're shocked that it's happening here. And let's look at the FBI director here, Kash Patel.
Did he write a written note before the assassination attempt? That's what the governor said yesterday. And what did that say? If you could.
So what I'm able to say, I'm sorry. So what I'm able to say is I addressed it partially earlier, is that the written note, we believe what did exist, and we have evidence to show what was in that note, which is, and I'm going to summarize, basically saying the suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note.
So if he wrote that note, and I don't know, he tried to destroy the note. Was it a digital note? Then he deleted it, and they're just getting out of this like trash can. They can recover deleted files, or did he actually handwrite a note and then maybe try to burn it, but part of it remained? I'm not sure.
Before the shooting, evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home. But we have since learned that the note, even though it has been destroyed, we have found forensic evidence of the note, and we have confirmed what that note says because of our aggressive interview posture at the FBI.
So I'm not quite sure if the note was digital. I would assume, because I don't know if young people usually don't write anymore. My guess is he wrote a note saying Charlie Kirk's coming, I'm planning to kill him. And then he deleted it on a Discord or something, and they were able to retrieve that. If that's the case, I know Tyler's lawyers are going to tell him to plead not guilty because there's really no other hope. I don't think the government is going to be in the mood to do a plea deal with Tyler. Typically, if this wasn't a famous case, what would happen is a defense lawyer, especially when there's a huge amount of evidence against their client, they'll tell their client, well, you're screwed. The best we can do is if you plead guilty so they don't have to bother with a trial, they will just give you life without parole. You won't get the death penalty. That's typically what they'll offer the district attorney. But in this case, because it's so high, the publicity is so high, I don't think the DA would take that deal if they want to take this guy down. So I don't think the DA is going to offer or agree to any deal that way. They're going to go for, no, we want to convict him. We want him to be put to death, executed for what he did. So the other option, people brought up is you claim insanity, not guilty by reason of insanity. But that's very difficult in Utah and a lot of states. You have to show if you're insane that you really broke from reality, that you don't know right from wrong. You don't even know really what you're doing. Whereas Tyler, there's just no way he's going to have an insanity defense because it shows premeditation. He planned his attack. He planned his escape. He knew it was wrong because he supposedly confessed to his father. So that rules out, there's almost no way a mentally ill defense or insanity defense, it will work. Now, he's probably autistic, but that's not enough to get you off a murder case. So I don't think they have that. So they're just trying, they're just going to say, well, shit, we'll just have to hope against hope. Maybe you get a stupid jury or something, but that's your only hope. So we're going to plead not guilty. But they got a lot of evidence against him. They got the video. They got his palm print supposedly on where they show him jumping off the roof. And so it's like fingerprints they have of him. And they forensically, it looks like they now have a note that he wrote saying he was planning this attack. His transgender lover, furry guy is squealing like a bitch. And it's probably, I would guess, the FBI says, unless you want to face the firing squad too, you might want to cooperate. And that he or him, they, she, whatever pronoun the little bitch is using, he, she, they, or them are squealing like a bitch. So they're going to testify, I'm sure, against Tyler. So I don't think Tyler has a really good options here, to be honest. It's going to be not a good thing for Tyler here. All right, which is good. I mean, he should be executed quickly. Sadly, it won't happen. All right, let's take a look at some more stuff about DNA and stuff.
My job as FBI director is not to speak to motive, is to speak to the facts. And that's what I'm going to do. His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years.
So this was, again, this is the fact. This is what his family said. This is what we heard from the Utah governor. This is what we're hearing from the FBI. This is what we're hearing from the FBI head, that the family said, not RAMZPAUL, not Nick Fuentes. His family said this guy was left-wing and he become more radical over the years. He went to college, then he got into these, probably Reddit. They said he was a Reddit guy, which is red flag. And then he got into these transgender furry discords, and he just went down that rabbit hole. And so remember, a lot of the left, they were trying to float that, oh no, he's actually a MAGA guy, or look at it because he's wearing a shirt that has a flag on it and an eagle. Well, yeah, because obviously he's going to try to blend in, right? He's not going to wear an Antifa slogan to a Charlie Kirk rally and want to blend in. Obviously, he wants to blend in. And then they're saying, well, his family were Republicans. Yeah, what does that got to do with anything? He wasn't, and his own family said he wasn't.
And he had a text message exchange, he, the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for. Those are factual.
So he did a text message. So, I mean, to put it, I hate to use the F word, fuck, but he's fucked because he wrote a note that they recovered I'm assuming it's digital. They have a text message. So it's probably not a good idea if you're planning an assassination to leave text messages that you're going to do it. It's usually not, it's not a brilliant mastermind to do that sort of thing.
Accurate investigatory findings by the FBI that we've handed over to the local authorities and the federal authorities to make their prosecutorial decisions. But I believe in this instance of such public importance, the public has a right to know. And I've told you I'm committed to transparency, and that's what I'm doing here today.
Why didn't that person that he was talking to, why didn't that person say something?
Our investigation is ongoing. That's a great question. And we don't have an answer on that.
So the investigation is not closed. What he said there, it's ongoing. And my opinion why is because right now they got to figure out how many people were involved, who do they want to charge, potentially the death penalty too, because just because you didn't pull the trigger doesn't mean if you help plan it, you could be headed to the chair or firing squad too. So to build the case, some of these people they may want to use to more flip to testify against Tyler. And they're probably working that out now. And they want to figure out how big this is. Like, was this higher up? Did they just get the idea or did this come up from someone higher up? And did they get funding from more important groups? So I think that's what they're looking at right now. And let me just show you JD Vance, who I do like, took over Charlie Kirk show today. And what they are talking about, JD Vance said they are going to be looking more than just this individual, and they're going to be looking to roll up a lot of these Antifa or Transfa terror cells. And that we're going to do. And Stephen Miller said, with God as my witness, we're going to use every resource we have at the DOJ, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these far left networks. We'll do it in Charlie's name. So I think they are quite serious about this. And again, this is something that the left has never really had to experience, having FBI informants and all that type of stuff. And even on the right, it got everyone real paranoid because you have to wonder, if someone flip, are they informant? Did Richard Spencer flip when he had all those legal problems? Did Fuentes? I mean, there's all these questions, but now that on the left, they're going to have these same questions. Is this guy legit or is he an informant? Because what the feds can do in a lot of these terror cells, because a lot of these guys in the terror cells are also drug addicts or they're drug dealers. They have other crimes too. So they can come to these people and they say, hey, we got this on you. You're going to be facing 20 years in prison. It's not going to be easy time for you. Or we'll give you another option. Work for us, help to identify people in your network, see what they're doing, give us information. And if you do that, you don't have to go to prison. And that's how they flip these people. So Antifa on these terror cells, they're going to have informants within them. No doubt now. The FBI's already said that. Just like the so-called right-wing groups, they all had informants. Well, the left-wing group will have informants. And that makes it hard for groups because if there's going to be informants in your group, then everyone gets paranoid. Like, well, is this guy just a weirdo? Or is he a Fed? The right always had to deal with that issue for a long time. Sometimes they're both. But in the left never really had to deal with it. They could just say, well, he's a weirdo. He's one of us, whatever. But now they have to think, wait a minute, could he be a Fed? Is he flipping? So that's going to create a lot of dissension within already, I bet these Antifa groups are having issues. I'll just put it that way. I bet a lot of people have decided they want to get out of that business. It's no longer any fun to be part of this because now it's serious. And the people that are involved in these groups, they're going to start to, when they do their little planning, like they've always done, the Black Bloc, we're going to go out, Ann Coulter's going to speak. Let's go to the university and do bomb threats and threaten to kill her. Well, used to they could do that and hey, no penalty, no worries. Now they do that uh-oh, they're going to be rolled up pretty quick on serious charges. So I think that's going to affect a lot of their behavior now. So that is what has happened there. And so I think that's, let me see if I have another thing from, I had another thing from President Trump talking about this, just so you know that they are going to be going after these people. And by the way, this shows that it wasn't just a lone wolf type of thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making these comments that they got to do more. So let's watch this here.
Going on Charlie Kirk's assassination as a left-wing, violence going on. Do you have plans, and actually this is a great opportunity with all these, do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%.
And another thing, this is going to create a big problem. So if they designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, then the people that are involved in these organizations, banks aren't going to want to do businesses with them at all. And so people involved with these organizations, even if they try to do everything legal, they're going to face what the right did. The banks are saying, we can't deal with you. You can't give you a bank account because you're designated a terrorist organization. And places like Patreon, if they have a Patreon for their shit, they're going, no, we can't be involved with a terrorist organization. I mean, we like you, but you're listed as a terrorist organization. So it's going to cause them a lot of problems if they get that designation, big problems. And then it caused them problems, just, they can't travel. If they want to go out of the country, their names will be on list as potential terrorists, as domestic terrorists. So they won't be able to travel to their other Antifa buddies around the world. So the world has changed for these people really quick.
There's also, by the way, but Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can think of?
There are other groups, yeah, there are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about that have.
And this is what I brought up, and it's great. A lot of people, I just did, and other people did too. And RICO, that's what they used to bankrupt the Ku Klux Klan. It was usually used for the mafia. That's what in the 70s is why they had this organized crime, racketeering, organized crime type of thing. But they've also used it against groups like the Klan. But now they can use this against Antifa. And this gets really interesting because if they can show like Antifa, I guess they pronounce it, has been funded by Soros, then Soros can be implicated criminally.
Been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes, what they're doing, where they're throwing bricks at cars of ICE and Border Patrol. And they come in with a beautiful new car. They're so proud.
See, this is the thing, is no one that I know is against protesting. So if Tyler and his transgender furry friend, whatever his name was, Lance or whatever, if they hated Charlie Kirk and they went to the rally outside and they were carrying a sign, that's fine. That's their constitutional rights. I don't think Americans have a problem with that. But they decide, no, we got to do more than that. We got to murder them.
It's Border Patrol, ICE, it's got whatever it is. And they're throwing rocks at it. And after 50 yards, it looks like an old beat up vehicle. It was just brand new. It was just bought for the purposes. And they don't have to take that anymore. I let it be known. We'll take responsibility. They don't have to take it anymore. And they don't want to take it. They were told by a past administration, it became almost a culture. If somebody throws a rock at you, do nothing. If somebody spits in your face, do nothing. And I say, when they spit, you hit. Do whatever you want. You do whatever the hell you want. I watched it so sick it made me. For 4 years, I had to sit home and watch people screaming at policemen and spitting in their face, and they weren't able to do anything. They just had a grin and bear it. They're standing up like a piece of steel. And a woman, in many cases, women, you can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant, something with Palestine. And I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. The people, there were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator. And you have a lot of them. And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against the criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail. What they're doing to this country is really subversive. Yeah.
So what Trump is saying here, and an interesting thing he is saying here, is they're going after just not like people that do assassinations. So obviously, if you do an assassination, that's a pretty serious crime. But he's saying even if you're doing stuff like Antifa used to do, remember how during the Summer of Love, all of a sudden a pallet of bricks would show up, and then the meth heads and the transgenders would show up with their black masks on, then they would throw bricks and set fires, and they had a grand old fun time. Nothing happened. Now it's like, well, if you do that, you're going to get serious prison time. And oh, if you're the people that bring the pallet of bricks, you're going to get a serious prison time. And maybe if you don't, maybe you can get out of serious prison time if you told us where you got your finance to buy these pallet of bricks to be thrown and try to hurt people. Who funded you? Who was the guy that gave you the money? It's like going after drug dealers. You just don't want to get the lowest level drug dealer on the street. You get him, but you got to deal with him to say, well, who supplied you and so on. So you get the top guy. And they suspect a lot of these top guys are the Soros and his son. And then they can use RICO to go after this. So this is more than just going after people that do assassinations. They're going to be going after people that are actually engaged in all sorts of criminal activity. So I think that is a good thing, and I think that's great. And I got some super chats. I'm going to read those now. And damn, Rams, you took the trans Chinese with those slated eyes. Quit the soy sauce now. It's bad luck for our people. Optics are important. Open your eyes. Do I have? Yeah, I'm still. My eyes are still adjusting. I will get my new glasses, I think, in a couple of weeks. It takes you about 2 or 3 weeks for your eyes and your brain really adjust to your new eyes. It's more your brain. The eyes, they fix right away, but your brain's, for all my life, my brain is used to my old lenses. Now I got new lenses in there. So that's good. All right. Troy, plus 10 to Rams monster pickup truck. Yeah, that'd be fun to have a monster pickup truck. That was like the most redneck thing I ever did, by the way, in my life. I took my son years ago in Oklahoma to one of those monster truck rallies, and boy, in Tulsa. That was fun, though. They had the Confederate battle flag. That was before Dylan Roof, and they could do that. And they had the big monster truck, and it crashed over all these other cars, and everyone was like, woo, the most exciting thing ever. And I'm like, boy, this is high culture. But people tend to like it. Rich Mountains told me he likes fish sticks. I think he likes steaks. I like a good steak. Necro Dancer 009. Thank you, Necro Dancer. Arc 5, the left glorifies mental illness and hate. R.I.P. Charlie Kirk. Yeah, it does. It's just a fad. A lot of these young girls, they like to brag about their mental illnesses. It's weird, but they do. And I'm like, well, just shut up and live life, And so, but yeah, everyone's got their old little mental illness now. It's getting a little tiresome. Real truth. How rampant are these far left people in our society? I really don't know. Reddit, are people getting recruited in these group chats? I would think a minute minority, but then again, I have no idea. Well, I think the ones that are really willing to do violence are pretty small. I mean, Tyler Robinson, most people aren't like him, but there was a lot of people that celebrated what he did. Now, they won't do it because they're scared. They don't want to go to jail forever or be executed, but they cheer when someone else does it. Although if they get fired and they get shamed, they will stop cheering. A lot of these people are cheering. They're what I call NPCs. They're mostly females, young females, and a lot of these girls, they can't think independently, and they, it's hard to me for blame them. They think what they're told to think. and their society tells them to think a certain way. There needs to be a lot of clearing in the universities and our school and the culture. We've allowed our culture to be taken over by people that really, really hate us. We'll just leave it at that, who they are. But, that has caused a problem. And then they brainwash a lot of these girls that don't have much agency. So they believe whatever they're told. And they think it's a good thing to cheer this type of thing. But the amount, so it depends how you define it. It's too many. It's shocking how many, millions of people sadly now think it's a good idea to murder someone because of their beliefs. But how many people would actually do it is still fairly small. But, that's why you got to stop it. That number could be growing. But I think there's going to be a crackdown on that right now. Technically, all liberals are insane, but that's no excuse for violence. Yeah. And I would say, again, there's a difference between old school liberals back in the day, like Walter Mondale or something, or Kennedy, or even Johnson, where it's, we believe in a lot of welfare and free health care and unions. That used to be liberals. And you could debate liberals. I've never been a liberal. But this new element, they're really psychotic. They hate liberals. They're more woke, and they're all about eliminating white people, eliminating Christians, especially the trans. They hate Christians because they're anti-God. There's a spiritual reason for it. And they just, again, they threaten liberals. And so they're very extreme. And part of it, I think, has been online culture. Beforehand, before the internet, you had weirdos, but they couldn't easily meet up with the other weirdos to reinforce their ideas. And so now you have all these weirdos meeting up, and they're getting into things that just didn't exist when I was young. You didn't have furries, people that you didn't even have transgender. You didn't have all this stuff. And so if you were kind of an odd kid, you could be odd, but you didn't find a community of weirdos like you. And that was, the thing there. So thank you for that. Let me go through, see if I have any other super chats, and feel free to keep sending them in. Now let me check my rants for Rumble. Oh, it's always good to have a rant. Oh, Digitus. Hey, Digitus, thank you. If I see that sack of shits Tyler mugshot one more time, it's a face you just want to punch out, but won't because we're on the right. We don't do violence. Pete, please tell that repulsive Weingarten. Yeah. It does anger me a lot too. It's one of those things that it's very easy to become like the left and the hatred, and it's tough. We have to channel that. Like I said afterwards, believe me, I felt all those emotions, but we need to channel it in a positive way. And I know Digitus is, I know, he's on our roundtable, very rational man. But yeah, it is just disgusting. And I just, we should hate people that do this, and we should hate these actions, but we got to be smart how we handle it. But believe me, it is horrific. And I agree with that. And Rojas, hey, Rojas, who's a good guy. How about this from a guy with a platform and banking? All right. We got another guy out here. Oh, let's see here. Right Angle News. Steve Bonnell, also known as Destiny. I guess his son is like a whole Nazi type. It's kind of funny. Yeah, Destiny. I saw him in real life once at the Ethan Ralph's bowling event. The guy's like a little goblin, really strange little character. Calls for conservatives to be killed more often so they will be afraid to attend events or speak out. Yeah, I don't know, man. That is, let's listen. I don't want to play it because I don't know if he'll say something that gets upset, but obviously he's Destiny's violating the terms of service of many platforms if he's calling for deaths of people. I don't know, just report people that are calling for deaths. That's what I would do. See where that goes. The left has to understand they're not immune. So, but they've always thought they're immune to all this. So that is what that is. So that was Trump. And let me see here. Let me just play a little bit of JD Vance. I thought JD Vance was really strong today. He took over the Charlie Kirk show. Let's just take a look at this.
Charlie's family and Charlie's remains in Arizona. I read a story in The Nation magazine about my dear friend, Charlie Kirk. Now, The Nation isn't a fringe blog. It's a well-funded, well-respected magazine whose publishing history goes back to the American Civil War.
All right. I'm not going to watch all this because I just saw it's 13 minutes. But basically, he says they're not going to tolerate these people that are funding this violence in these networks. And if you get a chance, check it out under him on X. I think JD Vance is very eloquent, and he had a really good message. All right. I guess the last thing about the Charlie Kirk thing that came up, there's been a debate, is someone said, was it going to be Nick Fuentes or Ben Shapiro taking over from Charlie Kirk? And the correct answer is neither, for different reasons. Charlie Kirk was interesting in the sense that he was very well connected within the Republican Party and conservative influencers, including President Trump, especially his son. He was friends with JD Vance, Vivek, Megyn Kelly, you name it. Charlie Kirk was integrated in the MAGA GOP realm. He had a lot of influence. And the good thing about Charlie Kirk is his views changed over time. Like a lot of people do, he started to become more based. And for example, he followed me. He followed me on X. So he knew who I was. I'm sure he saw my stuff. And he started, I always joke, everyone starts out more on the left and they become more and more like RAMZPAUL. And he kind of went that progression too. So I was happy with what he was doing, and he was getting some enemies, let's face it, in the Republican Party. He had some, Tucker pretty much confirmed this. He had some donors, Jewish donors, and they didn't like Charlie's stance as he was moderating on Israel. He used to be Israel's biggest fan. Then he started to question, should we really put Israel first? Although he didn't hate Jewish people or anything like that. I don't even think he hated Israel, but he had a position, I don't know, this whole Israel first thing. And he was getting pushback with the donors. And I know there's a whole theory that Tyler really didn't do it. It was actually Israel that did it. And, yeah, right. They're gonna use some mentally ill guy that's involved with furries. I mean, come on. Now, if they want to do assassinations, they can do that professionally. There's some people, no matter what happens, no matter what in life, they claim it's either a false flag and, the Jews are behind it. It doesn't matter what it is. And it's just hard to discuss rationally with those people. So I don't. But so Charlie Kirk, though, was really, even though he had some pushback, he was still very popular in the party. Whereas Nick Fuentes will never be able to get in the GOP. There's one time he could have, because Nick's talented enough, but Nick blew all his optics in various ways, like a list, and then he's come out against Trump at the last election. He was campaigning against Trump. So let's just, there's just no way that the mainstream GOP or MAGA GOP is ever going to embrace Nick Fuentes. In fact, Nick Fuentes, he talked about his crush on Gavin Newsom because Gavin's handsome. And I'm sure Nick will be campaigning against JD Vance once JD Vance is a nominee. So he's never going to be part of the GOP. And that's a huge thing. And you can say, oh, that's good. Well, okay. But we have a two-party system since the Civil War. And I don't really see any third party being able to gain steam. So the GOP is never going to allow Nick in position of power. They all disavow him, everyone. So he has no position in the Republican Party. I guess theoretically he could create a third party, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's just, it's like his little adventure with Kanye that went nowhere. And it can't, because we're a two-party system. If you're going to change something, you got to change it within the party, which has happened. The Democrats and the Republicans, they've been around forever, but the parties have changed. I would say Donald Trump changed the Republican Party. And the Democrat Party has really changed too over the years. So it's mostly from within. It's very difficult, though, to start an outside political party. That's just the way it is. So Nick, I mean, his expertise, I think, is his commentary, which he does a lot of good commentary, but there's just no way he's going to be like a Charlie Kirk where he has influence in the GOP ever. And this is the reality. And then Ben Shapiro's other name. And Ben Shapiro has, of course, a lot of the Jewish money and backing, and that's powerful in the GOP. I get it. But the younger people in the GOP, they just don't like his whole Israel first shtick. I mean, some of the older people like Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, but the new generation just doesn't go for that. So no, Ben Shapiro is not going to take over from Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk was a Christian man, where Ben Shapiro was not. Charlie had a wife and kids. Nick doesn't. Nick doesn't seem to be interested in that sort of thing. So there's a lot of differences there. So I don't think either of them will really take over that role. I don't know who will. I don't think anyone will take over exactly, but someone else will move, come up and do that. Now, I think Nick can be extremely influential, kind of like a Rush Limbaugh type, but I think he's more commentary. I think just the stuff he's done previously in his optics with, Kanye, the whole Hitler stuff and all that type of stuff is just, it's hard to recover from that. And I don't think he will. I don't think the Republicans will ever let him in. And I don't think the young Republicans want to go back to let's put Israel first thing. That's really dated. So we're going to get something new. That's my take on that. So I just how that seems to be to me. All right. I think I got another super chat. Thank you. Why are dwarves so against goblins? Both bleed red, both live underground, both like shiny, precious things. Seriously, they have the same, might as well let goblins marry our dwarven princesses. Yeah, I think it's because goblins are not honorable creatures, but dwarves are honorable. So even though we all bleed red, goblins, they cause issues. That's for sure. They're not really compatible with us. And they have a different morality, that's for sure. All right. So that's the Charlie Kirk. Okay, I want to do a couple other stories here now, because I'm sure I'll be referencing Charlie Kirk in the future as they roll up these anti-follow groups and everything. The other thing, this is, I hate the phrase "the movement." It just seems cringe to me, and reportedly, I saw this, and allegedly, this guy, Chris Cantwell, he was known as the crying Nazi, if you guys remember him. He was like a big tough guy in Charlottesville, showed off his guns, all that type of stuff. And he's really been spiraling. And he came out, I'm not going to show this all because it's pretty gross, but he described how he had sex with a young man, and he was proud of it. And it just reminded me of what the late, great Z-Man said. And this whole thing with Charlie Kirk and that girl, the Ukrainian girl on the bus, man, really makes me miss Z-Man. I would have loved us to discuss this on a Wednesday night. I would have loved to listen to his podcast about these subjects. I would have loved to read his daily essays. Man, that just sucks. That's been a huge loss this year. I know Charlie Kirk was a huge loss, but to a lot of us, Z-Man was, to me, as big as a loss. I mean, it wasn't a murder or anything, but it's still a huge loss. But Z-Man had one of his greatest posts is what he called the weirdo problem in dissident politics. I guess they have that problem on the left too. But this is where you got to get people of fairly good character. I mean, not everyone's perfect, so none of us are. But we have a lot of strange people, and strange people should never be given leadership positions or be looked up to. It's kind of like on the left, right? So if you're into weird, furry sex, that's probably a red flag. And if you're on the right and you're into strange things, that's probably a red flag. So, yeah, Chris Cantwell, allegedly, I don't know if he come out as gay, but he likes to have sex with this young guy. Yeah, it seems pretty crazy to me. All right. All right. The other story I wanted to talk about briefly, you probably heard in the news about these drones. These drones attacked Poland. Russia used drones to attack Poland. So Trump's got to get in the war. He's got to get in the war, defend NATO. And I'm not a big false flag guy, but this was a false flag. I mean, if you know how Zelensky operates, you just have to think about these things logically. Okay, what supposedly happened? Russian drones fell on Polish territory. Now that they are Russian drones, that's not disputed. But it's also not disputed they weren't armed. They were decoy drones. And when Russia did that big attack on Ukraine, what they used a lot of cheap decoy drones with the regular drones to try to, to confuse the anti-aircraft, anti-air defense. And some of these decoy drones that weren't armed landed in Poland, which to the Russians, they said, well, this is confusing. They don't have the range to get to Poland, so we don't know how they got there. We're happy to work with the Polish people, and we'll look at these and see how the hell that happened. These are our drones, but we didn't intentionally want them to land in Poland, and they weren't armed. It wasn't an attack, and we're confused how they even got there, and we're willing to work at an investigation. Well, the Poland and Europe doesn't want that. They just want us to go to war with Russia over unarmed decoy drones. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would Russia want to try to attack Europe with drones that aren't even armed? It doesn't make any logical sense. Now, there is some sense that Ukraine would want to take these drones because typically these decoy drones, they don't fly back to the base. They're real cheap. They just kind of crash. And you could refurbish them. So the idea was Ukraine refurbish some of these Russian drones, send them into Poland in order to create an incident to try to get, us in the war because Ukraine's losing the war. That could be, I don't know, but the whole drone thing was way overdone. And luckily, Trump is not falling for that. The other thing that's happening and this is a huge one, is Trump, I think, is actually did some 4D chess here. I know you hear this a lot, but this has to do with Ukraine. And here it is. This is a letter that President Trump sent to NATO and the world. So he sent this as a letter to them. Then he put this on Truth Social. I'm ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. As you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiation position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. Just say when. I believe this, plus NATO as a group placing 50 to 100% tariffs on China to be fully withdrawn after the war and when war with Russia and Ukraine is ended. And so as a background, this is very clever what Trump has did, because Lindsey Graham and the Ukrainians and Europeans, what they want to do is us to put more sanctions on Russia. The problem is we can't really put more Russian sanctions on Russia. They're already at max. What are we going to do? And the problem is the Russian economy, they still sell oil and natural gas and other things to a lot of other countries, including China and India are the big ones, but also to some NATO countries, including, I think, Turkey, which is a NATO country. Hungary, I believe, is a NATO country. They get still Russian oil. And so what happened is Zelensky in Europe, they're demanding that we place these secondary sanctions on India and China, 50 or 100%. And this is also, Lindsey Graham wants to do this. He calls it bone-crushing sanctions. It's a stupid idea. India and China said they won't change their behavior. China says basically, well, fine, if you do that, we'll cut off your rare earths, have fun. So I don't think Trump even wants to do these sanctions, but it's clever because he has to deal with the neocons. So he's saying, okay, hey, I'll do these sanctions but you guys got to, you know, Hungary, you can't buy Russian oil anymore. Neither, you can't work with the Russians anymore, Turkey. And by the way, France and Germany and all you guys and Britain, you got to place 100% tariffs on India and China too, which they won't do because their economies are in a disaster now. It's horrible what's happening in Europe. There's been a lot of uprising. All the leaders of Europe seem to want to do is to focus on Russia and bring in violent immigrants into their countries to displace their own people. Their economies are crashing. They don't give a shit about that. But if they put even a higher tariffs on China and India, it would just crash the whole thing. Trump knows that. So Trump is clever. He's basically saying, okay, if you do this thing, which I know you won't do, it's impossible for you to do, otherwise it'll crash your whole economy. I'm not going to do it, right? Why should we as the United States have to do all this and suffer all this pain when you guys won't even do it? So here's the deal. You guys do it, I'm on board. But if you're not going to do it, stop bitching to us. We're done. I'm tired of this war. And it sounds like he wants to walk away from it. So this is pretty clever because this gives, you know, plausible deniability to the neocons saying, hey, I was willing to put these heavy sanctions on China and India. I was willing to do it, but hey, Europe wouldn't go along with it. So what am I supposed to do? So it was very clever. It was very clever. And I think it is a little bit of 4D chess. So hopefully this will keep us out of that. So that was in the news too. And I, you know, kind of got pushed out because of the Charlie Kirk stuff, and that was happening. And then the last story, I'm not going to show it to you because who wants to see this? But this black guy pulled out his penis and peed on a white child in a movie theater. And the father of the child beat the shit out of the black guy, which deserves to happen. Some people, I don't know, we should have to live with them. If you can't control yourself, you shouldn't be in the public. You're basically an animal. And we shouldn't have to put up with that behavior. So that happened there too. All right, guys, it's been good streaming here. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate this. It's always good. And I hope to have a video out tomorrow. I'll do my top 5 news stories of the day. And there should be a lot of stuff going on still with the Charlie Kirk. I want to see some of the other investigations and who else they roll up and how this has changed in America, I think, is pretty fascinating. It's really had a opposite effect, I think, at least with me. It's not making me more timid. It's made me more bold. And I think a lot of people think that way too. So it's kind of like, what? You're saying we can't speak, otherwise you kill us? Well, fuck you. We're going to speak all the louder. So all the trans Antifa people that thought this would intimidate people, it's backfired on them big time. And now they're under the crosshairs. So it's there's been a fundamental change, and that's been good to see. So guys, thank you. We got a lot more news coming up tomorrow. It's great to be here with you guys, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.